Hello, I'm Chris Brown, Fleet Group Editor at Bobit, and welcome to the next episode of Fast Forward Interview Series. In this episode, I connect with Jay Collins, WEX's Senior Vice President and General Manager of EV and Mobility. For fleets looking to electrify, Jay and I discuss the factors to consider for setting up and managing home charging. Okay, well, everyone, welcome to this edition of Fast Forward video series. Today, I'm with Jay Collins, WEX's SVP and GM of EV and Mobility. Welcome, Jay.
Chris, thank you. Pleasure to be here. I appreciate you having us to talk about EV and sustainability.
EV and sustainability, and we're going to kind of drill down on a topic that as these fleets kind of embark on electrification would be take-home vehicles, right? It's a big section in fleet, and when you've got EVs, they're going to have to take them home and they're going to have to charge them. A lot of issues to get to. Why don't you start with an opening idea on how we should approach charging at home?
Yeah, Chris, you referenced something I think is really important there, right? There's a lot of things to consider, right? And I'd say that after 39 years in the fleet industry, amassing a portfolio of 12 million vehicles, we've done that by listening to our customers, listening to the challenges they're facing and creating solutions that work for them. We're committed to sustainability. We don't see this as a fad. And as a result, we're listening and learning to our customers. And I can say, I'd love to say the road to home charging is paved. It's not. It's far from it. There's still a little bit of dirt road ahead of us here, but I think we can work together and figure it out and make it a very workable solution. But that's not to say that it's immediately as simple as the new appliance being a level 2 home charger, being like a toaster where you just take it on and plug it in. There are many things to consider.
Yeah, there is. Well, hey, let's get into it. There's so many different home scenarios around the world in the US. So that the experience of getting that home charging in there varies greatly. So what are some of the first things fleets need to think about?
Yeah, and Chris, I'd say, this time of year, maybe the best phrase to use is do your homework, right? Like hearing it a lot around the house these days, and I think it's probably applicable here, which is really understanding where the vehicle is going to charge, having a charging plan, and then from there, understanding the readiness. If home charging is part of that, understanding the readiness. There are simple ways to do it. You can survey your employees in advance, basic questions. Do you own the home? Do you have a garage? Do you have 200 amp service, right? It's not, the next vehicle we need to replace, let's just buy an EV. It really is a case of where's the optimal place to put an EV into our fleet based on the readiness. So if home charging is there, you can then do an assessment before, say, ordering the vehicle. And that becomes important because what we've experienced is that the readiness of the home can differ greatly in terms of installation. So simply, buying the box, the wall unit, is one thing to consider. Standard installation is great, but what if there's a significant upgrade? And we can talk about that a little bit more, but I'd say the right use case into the right situation is what's going to give the best first experience from an EV perspective. So, I'd say single family, home that's ready with modern service, great scenario. Multifamily, units, not really there yet. We don't have, great solutions that we're seeing to be able to track and manage those costs.
Yeah, so 220 volts, that's sort of baseline, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
200 amp service coming into the house because you're likely going to have to install a 60 amp circuit. Would be the best. Some solutions require a higher circuit. Some can take a smaller circuit, but that just impacts your charging time.
Yeah, sure. Financing the installation costs, then handling the cost of the chargers. How should fleets look at that?
Yeah, I think there's three pieces to it, and I alluded to them earlier. There's the cost of the charger itself, so let's call the wall box, right? There's the installation of the charger, and let's say that's a standard installation. It's a fairly straightforward process. And then there's the potential upgrades that might need to occur to a home. And that's why doing the work up front to assess the situation is best, because if you can keep it into the first two, it's fairly straightforward. we can finance a box, to go on the wall. They're not that expensive. And actually employers are giving their employees a stipend and a small amount of money to install the box itself. That's different if they come to a conclusion where the home needs a significant upgrade. And then that question becomes, does the employer want to fund a home improvement project? Does the employee have the financial wherewithal to do it at this point in time? And the last thing you want to do is have an EV sitting in the driveway and realizing that you're facing a $10,000 or $15,000 upgrade to the home just to have the service ready. And we've seen experiences like that. So, understanding that ahead of time is really important to deploy the EV to the right location. And so I'd say, one important thing for employers to consider is, if you're going to pay for a box to be installed in an employee's home, if you're going to pay a stipend for standard installation, you should have some agreement with the employee on a clawback. If they depart midway through, you should have some way to say it's our discretion if we want to retrieve the unit, or if we want to get some money back for the investment that we put into the home.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of fleet managers have that issue, like, that they just sunk $2,000 or more into that, and they're going to basically take, like hold on to that, but not necessarily. I mean, it's an appliance that you can come and grab from the home. It's right into the agreement, as you said.
Right, you can. The cost of the unit itself is probably not such that, depending on how long the employee's had it, you may just say keep it. It really comes down to that broader question of if there was an upgrade to the home needed and the employer got involved in some way of doing that. So we'd say keep it to the employer funds the unit, funds the standard installation, but not necessarily the significant upgrade to the home. That should be in the employee's area of responsibility.
That's a really good distinction, Jay. Thank you. Yeah. So let's talk about home chargers. I mean, they're not all the same, but do they automatically determine like the optimal power for the specific vehicle being charged? Are they smart, dumb? What do you say to that?
Yeah, I'd say they're a little smarter than dumb, if that's the way to phrase it. They're not entirely dumb chargers, but they're not that smart that they can pick up from the vehicle itself what the optimal configuration would be. There are some exceptions, of course. Tesla, right? That charger knows that vehicle, but that's more the exception these days. Most of the OEMs, the vehicle manufacturers, are different from the manufacturers of the charging devices themselves, and so therefore, it is most common that you would have to do some configuration. Plus you have to consider the right size circuit for the charger itself, right? Some chargers have different requirements. I know, Ford has an 80 amp requirement versus some of the others that are 60 or 50. Pretty easy stuff when you're doing the install to get that piece right. And then you use a simple software app to say, okay, here's the battery size of the vehicle or the VIN of the vehicle, and it'll tell you the the optimal settings for the charger. It also gives you the ability to set things in place like don't charge until after peak times, right? So you can do peak shaving and say don't kick in until 9 p.m. because we don't want to pay double the rate for charging at home, when one of the greatest benefits is how cost effective it is.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good points. Yeah, I mean, how does a fleet manager know it's like their vehicle that's being charged and that the data is coming off the charger? Again, smart, dumb question.
Yeah, no, and that's a great question, because the reality of it is they don't. From the charger itself, the charger isn't necessarily, aside from providing energy to the battery, it's not really picking up any information like the vehicle identification number or something like that. So that's where we have to come at it from the vehicle to say this charge went into this vehicle. So it's going to be a combination of the charger itself and the vehicle itself that really create that control that our customers look for in the commercial space. If this is personal use, it doesn't really matter. But if it's a commercial application, fleet managers want to know that it was their vehicle that took the energy that they're paying for.
Sure. Actually, I'm sorry. Can a fleet manager know that they've got 10 vehicles being charged, that one is being charged and one isn't? Is that on an app that they can use on their desktop or their phone, or?
So if you had a depot scenario where
Yeah.
where vehicles were coming to the same location, the answer to that's yes.
Yeah.
I have not yet seen an app where they can pull together how many of their vehicles are charging at the home. We haven't heard a request for it, and haven't seen it at this point in time. But certainly in a depot scenario, they can.
Okay. Yeah. So when we get into onboarding, sort of the customer experience would be the fleet driver. Um, this is new to them. What do you tell them that they're going to have to be doing that's different? You're going to get a box installed. You're going to have to charge that vehicle, but what does the employee have to do? The extra tasks they have to do with the home charging experience.
Yeah, and I'd say those fall into two categories, right? There are those one-time tasks, which are the installation, the configuration, and things like that. And then there are the ongoing tasks. And quite frankly, the ongoing tasks are pretty straightforward, right? Plug it in, unplug it. But I'd say there's also an important one in there, which is making sure that the employee is and the employer are comfortable with the reimbursement rate, right? So there are tools that we can use from a zip code rate checker, creating a bit of a buffer to make sure that the employee is being compensated for any, there is going to be a little bit of line loss in there. So, and making sure that there's an agreement between the employer and the employee on the rate. You don't want to have a situation where a year down the road, someone is saying, wait a minute, I wasn't getting compensated enough for the energy that I was using. So, upfront one-time situations followed by ongoing. It is pretty simple once you've got one installed. So I'd say the process of the hot new appliance being the level 2 charger, it takes a little more work than simply plugging it in, but once it's in, it is pretty straightforward. The only scenario I can think about moving forward, and one we're all used to, which is sometimes you have to reboot your router. There may be a time when you need to reboot the level 2 charger. We haven't seen it yet, but I suspect situations will occur. And one final thing that we're learning that from some folks haven't considered in the process, a lot of folks install the charger on the outside wall of a garage, which isn't within range of a Wi-Fi device. So they can pick it up, and that's how we're grabbing the information off of it. So I think it's important to make sure that there's a reasonable enough signal reaching the charger so that information can be grabbed.
Yeah, really good point. And the reimbursement point is really obviously very prevalent here too. So let's just talk about, I mean, the benefits. This is more of an onboarding with the drivers, right? I mean, we got to tell them what the real benefits are for charging at home and what the benefits to the fleet and the organization are.
Yeah, in this situation, I'm just going to go with some personal experience, right? And that is, it seems like when I get in my internal combustion vehicles at home, the rest of the family thinks if the orange light's on, that means you're at home. And it always seems like the first trip is to the gas station, right? With the EV, every morning when I get in, it's got a full battery. And it is, the amount of times I now hit a fast charging location are really only on long trips. It really, it makes it much more convenient to wake up every morning with a full tank of fuel, for a lack of a better analogy here. And so I'd say that is first and foremost a great value of home charging for the employee, right? And the other part is that it's reliability. You're not out there searching for chargers. You're not, every morning you're getting in, it's got a full battery, and maybe on a long day you're having to hit a fast charger, but that's a pretty straightforward process. It's the reliability of it being at home. You plug it in, it works, right? And the other part I'd say, and this is less to the employee, but more to the employer, and that's the cost savings. Right? I mean, if you do some really broad stroke math on a fast charger, maybe it's 15 cents per mile if you count everything in on a standard vehicle, and those are broad strokes. Let's use a regular internal combustion engine. At 20 miles a gallon, maybe that's 20 cents a mile at $4 a gallon, right? If you play that across, 15 cents against 20 cents isn't very big. But if you're charging at home, it's 2 or 3 cents. That would be the difference, driving around and seeing a placard out in front of one fuel location saying $4 a gallon and another one saying $1 a gallon, less than $1. You don't see that spread in the marketplace, and it gives fleet managers the ability to control their costs in a way they've never been able to in an internal combustion world.
Yeah, really good points. Hey, Jay, listen, thank you for filling us in. This is a path for fleets that really needs to be addressed, and I think we got some good learnings out of it. So I appreciate you being on a Fast Forward video series.
And Chris, thank you for having Wex on and sharing our experiences. And I'd say none of these challenges are insurmountable, right? They all can be addressed, and we see the value to the planet and to our customers' bottom lines. And we think it's well worth it. So thank you for having us on and having this conversation.
Absolutely, Jay. Thank you so much.